In 1961, President Kennedy called on all Americans to rise to the challenges of the day. He knew that success depended upon the unity of efforts throughout the federal government and the nation. The Greater Boston Federal Executive Board, one of 28 across the country, fosters communication, coordination, and collaboration with federal, state, and local government agencies. This is your federal government, and I am your host, Diane LeBlanc. Hello, everyone. Today we are featuring the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division, which is the federal entity with sole jurisdiction over federal tax crimes. Our guests today are Mr. William Offord, who is a special agent in charge of the IRS Criminal Investigation Boston Field Office, and Mr. Philip Hall, who is the assistant special agent in charge. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Mr. Offord, do you prefer William or Bill, or?
Let's go with Bill.
Okay, we're going to go with Bill, and
Phil's fine.
Phil is fine. All right. So we are going to start with you, Special Agent in Charge. Most folks know a little bit about the Internal Revenue Service and what its basic mission is: collecting taxes, dispersing payments. But they don't necessarily know about your particular part of the IRS, criminal investigations. So talk a little bit about the history, how you fit with the overall agency, and what your particular mission is.
Well, again, Diane, thank you for having us today. You know, both Phil and I have over 25 years with IRS criminal investigation, and there's nothing we like to do more than talk about it.
There you go.
Just ask our spouses. Our mission is to enforce the criminal tax laws of this country. It's important that we do it because we are the only ones who can do it. We are the only agency that has that jurisdiction over the federal income tax laws. You know, we've been in existence since the early 20th century. We kind of became well known in the 20s and 30s with a case that we had, the Al Capone investigation. Okay. And that's kind of the investigation that put us on the map. It was the first investigation with nationwide coverage that kind of displayed our financial expertise. You know, Mr. Capone, he had a lot of money. He didn't pay any taxes. He didn't report his taxes. And you know, through our financial investigative techniques, we were able to prove that he owed taxes, and that is the reason he went to prison. In about the 1980s, along with our primary focus on federal, income taxes, we also picked up some other criminal statutes that we enforce, the federal money laundering statutes and the bank secrecy laws that have become an important part of what we do, along with our primary mission of income taxes.
Excellent. All right. So, Phil, how is the Criminal Investigation Division organized across the country, here, regionally, locally, to carry out this mission?
Well, we are nationally and internationally based. The headquarters for the agency is co-located in D.C. with all the other agencies and the main IRS. But day-to-day business is conducted in our 26 field offices, one of which is the New England field office. In each of these field offices, there will be support staff and agents. Nationally, we have about 3,800 employees altogether, and of that, 2,700 of them approximately are special agents, or the investigators that are out doing the field work. Within those offices, the agents will be conducting a variety of different activities, maybe doing criminal investigations, but we also have agents in the offices that have collateral duties, that have other assignments that they might be doing, such as someone who might be an asset forfeiture specialist, our firearms instructors, people that are specialized in handling our technical equipment for conducting undercover operations. And more importantly now, we have a group of agents called our criminal investigative specialists. And those are the agents that are designated and given extensive federal special training in handling computers and computer evidence. And because we deal with computer evidence on a daily basis, more and more of our evidence comes to us in electronic fashion, and we need to have specialists who can extract that information from the computers.
Okay, so I think you're a mind reader, because that's a question I usually ask a little bit out, but that was great. I want to just go back a little bit. I think you said 26 field offices across the country?
Yes.
Did I get that right? And Boston is one of those field offices. Yep. So what geographic area of responsibility do you cover in the Boston field office? What does that look like in terms of employees and where those offices are located?
Yeah, in the Boston field office, it encompasses all of New England. So it's fairly straightforward. It's the 6 New England states. And we have agents in offices in each of the states, and they're distributed essentially based on population. So we have more agents here in Massachusetts. Our staff here in New England is 120 agents, and 50 of those agents are right here in Massachusetts. We have a next largest group of agents down in Connecticut, and then getting smaller and smaller to, unfortunately right now we've only got 2 agents up in Vermont, to covering all the state of Vermont.
But about 120 total to cover the New England states.
New England area.
And now in terms of staff and personnel, is everybody that works for you an agent, or do you have folks that fall into other categories, different job titles?
Yeah, I mean, about 90 of our employees are special agents who go out and do field work, and also the managers are also special agents. But we do have support staff who, we have investigative analysts. We have a position called tax fraud investigative assistant, and then we have a more secretarial administrative type role too. And again, we have 10 squads of agents around New England, and each of those squads has both agents and support staff.
So you're the special agent in charge. What are your responsibilities?
My responsibility as the special agent in charge is to provide broad oversight for the field office. Our mission pretty much stays the same, and it's been the same for 80 or 90 years. But every year we have new compliance priorities, and I'm expected to make sure my field office stays focused on those particular priorities. A lot of our time is spent managing our investigations. At any given time, we have a little over 200 investigations ongoing in New England. And, but my management team, my 10 managers, my ASACs and I, we provide oversight, and that's really important because, it's a great responsibility, to initiate an investigation on someone, because it does have a profound impact on their lives.
Of course.
And so, we don't take that responsibility lightly, and during the investigation, there's constant managerial oversight, and if we reach a point to where we need to get out of the investigation, we will.
Makes sense. What are the primary focuses of those investigations? I mean, what are you looking for?
Well, it would depend on what kind of investigation, but again, at least half of our work at any given time is focused on our primary tax mission and enforcing the Internal Revenue Code laws. From a criminal point of view, that can include tax evasion, failure to file tax returns, filing false returns, and a lot of those investigations we work closely with the other civil functions of the IRS. That they go out and do audits, or they go out and try to collect taxes. That's their primary mission. But if they detect fraud during the course of that, they will refer the information over to us. At least, a good percentage of what we do are money laundering investigations that we work closely with the United States Attorney's Office and the other federal law enforcement agencies. And again, that's us bringing our financial investigative expertise to those investigations to prove money laundering violations.
So You mentioned the civil side of the house, and when does something become a criminal investigation? I think the key word you said might have been fraud.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, a good example would be, you know, let's say the civil functions go out and start auditing a taxpayer. And during the course of that audit, that they determined that someone had, you know, had hidden records from us, or they had created nominee bank accounts to hide income, or, you know, there was a significant amount of tax due and owing, or they had done it over a long period of time. All of those things can result in what we refer to as criminal intent or willfulness. Mm-hmm. And if they start seeing that stuff, they will refer it over to the criminal investigation for us to conduct an investigation, you know, kind of in partnership with them. Same thing with tax collection. You know, if a taxpayer is hiding assets, that could be, you know, fraudulent behavior.
So there's a very close working relationship between the different parts of the IRS to sort of decide who should be handling what.
Yes, any of our tax-related investigations, we work closely with the other functions.
And you touched a little bit on working with other federal agencies. Phil, elaborate on that. How do IRS criminal investigation agents work with other federal agencies?
Well, I guess it all starts essentially working with other agencies. A lot of that starts with is that while we conduct criminal investigations, all of our cases are actually prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the judicial districts where those investigations lie. So in Massachusetts or another state in New England where there would be a different judicial district. We work hand in hand with those prosecutors in prosecuting our cases, and in some instances under the grand jury procedures, we may work with them through the investigative process also. And most of the time where those grand jury cases occur, we're working with them and another agency on an investigation that has mutual interest on our behalf to both agencies. Mm-hmm. So there might be a major fraud investigation that involves a fraud or crime or bank fraud, such as Bernie Madoff, and also tax consequences for people that were also involved in that game. We also are proactive in working with other agencies. Currently we have agencies that actually sit over with FBI, with DEA, with HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, to make sure that we're able to communicate and understanding and get a first-hand look at investigations that they're looking at that might be of mutual interest to us.
And your agency has a seat on the Joint Terrorism Task Force as well, is that?
We do. We have an agent assigned over to work at the Joint Terrorism Task Force at FBI here in Boston, and in the other jurisdictions where the task force exists throughout our field office.
You know, in preparing for our conversation today, looking at the website, I saw a press release which talked about how your agency is working to support other law enforcement agencies as they're trying to catch folks that are engaging in identity theft, and pretty impressive. Could you talk about that?
Yes, Diane, I think everybody knows by now that stolen identity refund fraud is very common. It's way too common nowadays. And the IRS in the last couple of years, we've taken a lot of steps to try to, you know, prevent that. It's kind of a three-pronged approach. You know, it's prevention, identifying the fraud, and finally a victim assistance. Because when someone is a victim of identity fraud, when they try to file their own tax return, there's a problem. So we have a procedure in place now to where they can come into the IRS and we will resolve it for them as soon as possible. When someone is a victim of identity theft, you know, they're probably going to contact their local law enforcement agency, and you know, an investigation will be started. In the past, we've had a hard time providing the state and local law enforcement agencies with federal tax information because of our strict disclosure laws. Just in the last year or so, we have come out with a new procedure that allows the local law enforcement or state law enforcement to go to the victim and get their permission to share tax information with the law enforcement agency, and that's made it much easier for them to investigate this refund fraud. I mentioned the IRS. You know, it has been a problem the last couple of years, the use of stolen identities for refund fraud. We are getting better at stopping it. During fiscal year 2012, the IRS stopped $20 billion worth of fraudulent refund claims. Wow. And in the last 6 months, we've initiated close to 700 criminal investigations around the country. So it is something we're addressing, and we're getting better at stopping.
And so, I mean, there's really a trend there. And what you said about, you know, the Internal Revenue Service, and we all know that the Internal Revenue Service goes to great lengths to protect taxpayer information. I mean, and that's as you would want it to be. But in this particular case, it seems to make perfect sense that you would go to the victim and say, hey, do you want us to release this information so that it can help the law enforcement agencies? And very successful program. And I read that you piloted it in 9 different states, but now it's been rolled out to all 50 states.
That's correct. Yeah. This problem, kind of ground zero for this problem, it was Florida, South Florida in particular, and they had a lot of problems down there with sharing that information with the other law enforcement agencies. So we kind of learned our lesson there and came out with a new procedure. It's spread around the country until just the last couple of weeks. Now it's in all 50 states.
Figured out a way to make it happen. You know, Phil, earlier when I said you read my mind, you started to talk about sort of what criminal investigators do. And there's a bunch of different things that they could be working on. But what are what's a typical day like for the majority of the folks that you supervise?
Well, I would say at any one particular time, our agents are all kind of doing different things. So there's no set average day for any one agent, but because they're all doing a variety of different activities in their investigation. It could involve actually conducting an interview with the subject of the investigation or that subject's CPA. Could be other witnesses that need to be contacted in that case. It might even be meeting with an informant who had come into our office where we'd gotten information from to maybe develop and initiate a case. All our agents, you know, full law enforcement authority, which means that we are conducting search warrants and seizure warrants, and so the agent might be writing an affidavit to obtain a search warrant for a location to gather evidence. And while I mentioned before that a lot of our evidence comes in the form of computer records, and there isn't a search warrant we do nowadays that we don't see as a computer or some electronic device, but we still deal a lot with paper too. So we still have boxes and boxes of records. So the agent might be either analyzing electronic records or doing data input of individual checks or spreadsheets or financial records that were seized in a search warrant to come up with an income calculation for an individual.
So again, you've been with the agency a long time. I was going to ask, how has the work of the office and the work of an agent changed over the last 20 years? Is it the technology that's made the biggest difference?
I would say so. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of our investigations that we're doing now are still very similar to what we were doing, as Bill said, 25 years ago when we both started. In terms of the crimes or the federal violations and statutes that we prove under the tax law, those haven't changed. So we're still enforcing those same core statutes in the tax law. But how we do that on a day-to-day basis and the amount of computer records that we have, the need we have for specialized expertise, both locally in our field office and in headquarters, and on top of that, a younger workforce that comes in that brings a dynamic and a better understanding of computers is helping us keep on top of.
What sort of special training do your agents need?
Well, first off the bat, all of our new hires go to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Georgia, and it's a joint training facility with over 60 federal agencies that train there. And our agents first attend a 9-week course called Criminal Investigative Training Program, which is a general police constitutional law course, and they could be in that class with new hires from another agency. And then after that, there's another, I think, approximately 10 weeks of specialized training just for IRS, and that's where they get training in the specific tax violations that we enforce, different methods of proof that we use in putting our cases together. And they will also get instruction, as Bill mentioned, in money laundering and Bank Secrecy Act violations. And we'll do some practical exercises as part of that training too.
We talked about the identity theft. What other trends are you seeing?
One of the trends right now is, and we've been addressing this for several years, is return preparer fraud. You know, every filing season, taxpayers depend on return preparers to prepare accurate and, returns for them. Unfortunately, there's some return preparers out there who take advantage of taxpayers, who don't file fraudulent returns, that they do file fraudulent returns, that they try to get bigger refunds for people fraudulently, and that the taxpayer may not even know about it. So we get involved in those investigations during the filing season, which is this time of year. We actually send undercover agents in to, term we use is shop those return preparers to see if they're going to do a fraudulent return for us. And if they do, there's a good chance we're going to initiate an investigation and follow up with a search warrant.
So buyer beware.
Yes.
And so what should I look for if I'm looking for a tax preparer?
I think, it's the responsibility of every taxpayer to be as vigilant as possible when they go to get their return prepared. If you walk into a tax preparer and they promise you a big refund, you better be careful. If they ask you to go out and find another deduction, or put another child that's not yours on the return to get a bigger refund.
That would be a clue.
Yes.
That would be a clue.
And it's pretty amazing that some of the stuff we see out there that they will,
So that's a trend, and obviously they're looking to get customers. And any other trends?
Another trend we're seeing around the country and also here in New England are the sovereign citizen movement. These are folks who don't necessarily recognize the federal government, and as part of their belief system, they don't want to pay federal income taxes. So, we do have those groups in New England, and we have started addressing those groups in partnership with the other federal agencies and the United States Attorney's offices.
Wow. Now, one of you, I don't remember if it was you, Bill, or you, Phil, but mentioned work beyond the United States and in international offices. So, Phil, what does that look like?
Well, we have special agents posted in 10 different embassies or consulates around the world. And this program's been in place and it's gradually grown for about the last 15 years. And it's an acknowledgement of one of the global economy and how intertwined our tax system is with other countries, and how tax evaders have gotten to be more sophisticated in moving their money offshore or conducting crimes that involve transactions between different national jurisdictions. So the agents that are there are there to help us obtain evidence to assist cases that we're investigating domestically. They're there to develop relationships with those other countries in their sphere of assignment, because we've only got 10 people. There's a lot more than 10 countries in the world, so they cover a geographic region. They're there to develop relationships and maybe identify some cases that other countries might be able to bring to our attention. They might participate and assist in an extradition of someone we want to bring back here, and again, more and more of our cases have an international nexus to them, with a big example being the United Bank of Switzerland case, or the UBS case a few years ago that led to a large group of prosecutions and a voluntary disclosure program that the IRS initiated to bring people in compliance.
Now, has your agency always done the international work, or is this something that started at some point in your history?
Well, it was approximately back in, I say, 1990, early 90s, where we first assigned an agent down to Colombia to assist primarily with the narcotics investigations that we were working jointly with other agencies and on our own. We found there was a benefit in having someone based in Colombia, so that is one of the locations where we have someone, and then it moved on to where we had somebody in Mexico City. And currently now, that program expanded to where we have someone in Sydney, Australia, Beijing, Hong Kong, Frankfurt, London, and Barbados.
So to be a criminal investigations agent, do you need to be mobile? Are you subject to being moved at sort of any time in terms of your career?
Our typical field agent, once they get the job someplace, that they do sign what we call a mobility statement where they agree to be mobile. In reality, we don't move our agents around very much because we want them to develop the local knowledge. Now, if they do decide to go into a leadership position like Phil and I did, then it's you're not sure what's going to happen. There's a good chance you're going to be moved around the country.
Well, and I'm going to come back to that and ask you a little bit about your careers. But, we've been talking about the work of your folks and the agents and the work that you do here in the country, here in the New England states, here in Massachusetts, and across the globe, essentially. Let's talk about penalties. You do your investigations, you identify the bad people, you work with the U.S. attorneys, and there's a prosecution. What are the penalties? Are they fines? Are they prison?
Well, keep in mind our primary mission in criminal investigation is to foster voluntary compliance with the tax laws. We feel like the best way to do that is when we criminally investigate an individual and the United States Attorney's Office prosecutes them. We want them to go to prison because we feel like that has the most deterrent impact on the United States. Along with that, there are fines involved, but usually much bigger than the fines is the additional tax due and owing that taxpayer is going to owe, and they still have to pay that along with interest and penalties. So, they can go to prison, they can owe all the back taxes. In some of our investigations, usually the money laundering or the bank secrecy law investigations, there's an asset forfeiture component where we can go out and seize and forfeit all of the ill-gotten gains that the criminals earned from their activity.
So certainly a deterrent, and that's the goal. Phil, tell me how long you've been with the IRS and a little bit about your career.
Yeah, well, I guess I just clicked over 26 years with criminal investigation. I've started my career in Los Angeles, heard an ad on the radio, which we don't do anymore, I don't think, and applied for the job out there. I was there for about 9 years or so, and then became interested in management and took a management job back here in Boston. From there, as Bill mentioned, I have moved on to a headquarters assignment for a little over 3 years, where I worked in our international section there, supporting the international offices, and then came back to Boston in another management role, and now in the ASAC position.
Excellent. And how about you, Bill?
Well, very, very similar history. I started my career a little over 25 years ago here in Massachusetts. I was a field agent out in Springfield, Massachusetts for 10 years. And then I made a decision to go into management. So like I said, once you make that decision, you're subject to movement. So I actually, my first manager job was in El Paso, Texas. And then I went through headquarters, and then I went to New Jersey, where I was both the ASAC and the special agent in charge in New Jersey. And as I'm fond of saying, I had 3 children born in 3 different states.
Wow.
So that's kind of illustrates my mobility and the support of my spouse also. I did marry a girl from New England, so she finally got me back here, and I've been back in Massachusetts for the last 2.5 years.
Now, how about your educational background? What did that look like to qualify you for the entry-level position with the IRS?
Most of our special agents, they were accounting majors in college. Now, we don't require an accounting degree, but we do require several accounting courses. So the vast majority of our agents have an accounting degree, and in the last 10 to 15 years, we tend to hire probably older agents who have some experience in private industry after they got out of college, and then they hear about us, and they decide to do something different, and they apply. Probably our typical agent starts in their late 20s, early 30s.
And this is a law enforcement career for most of your folks. Is there a mandatory retirement age?
Yes, the mandatory retirement age is 57. Okay. The good thing is we can retire at any age with 25 years of service because it is considered a law enforcement position. And I'd say most of our agents retire in their early 50s, and most of them, when they do that, they start a second career.
So you've traveled a little bit for this agency to serve your country. Would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely. Lucked upon this job. It wasn't something I had identified when I was in college, but I was lucky to stumble across it a few years later, as Bill said, after working in the private sector for a while, and I wouldn't have done anything different.
And Bill, advice to somebody who might be considering a career with the IRS, specifically criminal investigations?
If you're young enough, make sure you're focused on getting the accounting degree or taking the accounting courses, and apply. The application process takes a long time. It can take 2 or 3 years, but keep your eye out for an announcement on USA Jobs, and once you apply and you get in the queue, then it's just a matter of waiting until we have positions available.
What's the most common misunderstanding out there about criminal investigations?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we are a very small part of the IRS. We don't do audits. We don't go out and collect money. Our mission is to put people in jail who cheat on their taxes. Mm-hmm. And the reason we do that is to foster the voluntary compliance. A lot of my neighbors, when they hear I work for the IRS, they're like, "Oh, you do audits?" And I tell them I don't.
Right, there you go. You put people in jail.
Yes.
That's your job. So what?
Well, I was just going to say, and most people don't understand that we are a law enforcement agency, that we are doing the arrests, doing the search warrants ourselves.
Right.
And it's our own agents there.
Well, I think we've cleared that up. What else do you think our viewers need to know, should know, about the Criminal Investigation Division that we've not shared with them?
Well, I want to take an opportunity to thank the American taxpayer for making our tax system the most efficient in the world. It is the envy of so many other countries. And what makes it work so well is it's based upon the concept of voluntary compliance. The vast majority of taxpayers are honest. Mm-hmm. They file their tax returns. They report all their income. And that's what makes the system work. Unfortunately, there is that small percentage, what we'll call them the 1%, who are not in compliance. And what I would tell those people is, don't wait for us to contact you. If you're not able to sleep at night worrying about your tax situation, contact the IRS and start getting it resolved. Because best case scenario is the longer you wait, the more money you're going to owe in interest and penalties. Worst case scenario is you're going to get a visit from a couple of my special agents, and if that happens, your tax situation is a mess, and you're still going to owe the money, but then you're facing a potential prison sentence.
So it's time to come clean.
Yes.
There you go. Excellent. Well, I want to thank Mr. Offord and Mr. Hall for being with us today and for helping us to better understand the work of the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I thank you for watching, and I hope that you will continue to join us as we feature other federal agencies on your federal government.